Join me, for today we go pining for the fjords. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and welcome back. It is 2020, Christmas is over, my break is over, I'm back. And I actually have been pretty busy behind the camera, mostly in watching a lot of horror movies and writing up notes on them, but also in doing some stuff that I'm pretty excited about that you probably just wouldn't be able to tell in the first place. But you might notice that there's a little bit of a lighting difference, a little bit of a color difference, maybe a little bit of a camera angle difference. I made a lot of changes to the back rig of this system that I have here for the camera and so forth. And one of the big benefits of this is that. Bet you didn't feel that. Nope. No more camera shake when I lean on the desk or, knock on it or anything like that. That's because I have the camera mounted in a totally different way. Just little things like that I'm actually pretty excited about. But moving forward, I did watch a lot of horror movies, and one of the things that I wanted to do in starting 2020 is capping off with a bunch of movies from 2019 that I might have missed. Now, this channel does kind of tend to focus, not really on purpose, but just, by, I guess, how it just shakes out on the lesser known stuff, kind of the bottom of the barrel, and sometimes that can really bite me. But I still want to give some credit where credit's due and review movies that are more mainstream and more in the public spotlight. I have a lot of people ask me, well, what about this major release? What did you think of that? And I do want to weigh in on it. And one of the ones that I really wanted to weigh in on and watch was Midsommar. Now, you might remember one of my very earliest reviews, I think it was less than 30 reviews in, I reviewed Hereditary. And that was actually even my old scoring system, so even the scores really won't line up properly with that. But I recall one of the things I liked about it was the acting and the aesthetic and the mood and so forth was really, really good. But the storyline itself, from a mystery and trying to solve what's going on kind of beat pattern, didn't work for me quite so much. And what I found about Midsommar is that, well, first of all, I saw the director's cut. I wanted to, if Ari Aster wanted, the version that he wanted to put in front of my eyeballs is the one I wanted to watch. So this clocked in at almost 3 hours long. Now, I thought that on a story front level, that Midsommar was actually slightly more intriguing, more captivating than I found Hereditary to be. There were elements of it that I liked better, and elements of it that didn't work quite so well. And what I found it to be ultimately was, from a full-length motion picture release, a very, very good sophomore entry in for Ari Aster. So this movie follows the characters of Danny and Christian, played by Florence Pugh and Jack Rayner, respectively, as they are... they're kind of going through some shit. Danny is heartbroken. Her family had tragically passed away, and in a very, very, very haunting sequence, Christian is her boyfriend that had been wanting to kind of, he's been milling around the idea of breaking up with her. There's a lot of things. She's been kind of proving to be a bit high maintenance in all of the steps that led up to the tragedy of the family. They're basically kind of, at this point, college students. This was a little bit too much for him. He kind of wanted to break ties, but then this tragedy happened. He felt guilty. So they're still together in what I would call to be not the most healthy relationship, as she's struggling with her mourning. He's struggling with the guilt of not wanting to leave, but wanting to leave. And there's a lot of elements of this that I thought were really interesting on a relationship level, especially in terms of gaslighting. There's a lot of sequences in which Christian is proving to be a bit of a dick, and the argument kind of goes in a circular fashion until Danny is the one apologizing, and that happens a fair bit. And I thought it was kind of an interesting, storyline aspect to a relationship, kind of showing the complexities that can be, involved in a couple that aren't together in a meaningful and healthy manner. And regardless, they get invited to go to Sweden with some friends of theirs on a bit of an academic level, an anthropological level, as one of their friends belongs to a very secluded, very remote village within Sweden that has their own special ceremonies that have never really been seen by outsiders before, and they want to, Christian especially, Danny's just mostly kind of along for the ride, doesn't want to be alone, wants to be involved in Christian's life, but Christian wants to document this. He wants to do, or he's kind of trying to think of what his master's thesis is going to be, and this kind of rings some bells that maybe there's something in there. So they go and they find that this, basically the ceremony is way more than they bargained for, and tragedy ensues as it continues on. So that's pretty much all I really want to give away of the movie. I imagine most everybody that's watching this review has already seen it, but regardless, I'm going to try and keep it a little bit spoiler-free-ish if I can, especially if all it takes is just a little bit of holding back on some verbiage. So, again, I saw the director's cut of this, and although I thought this was absolutely a gorgeous movie, through and through, beautiful, 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 especially in the intricate details of the culture and the setting. Everything about this was phenomenal on a visual level. What I also found it to be was not very scary. And I also found it to be not very shocking. And I think especially, as much as I try to kind of tune out the outside world before watching a movie as far as hearing other people's thoughts about it and so forth, this is one of the pitfalls of having both a very, very, very frequently talked about film and also me delaying my watch of it, is I just can't help but have that outside feedback enter into my ears. It's just something, this is one of those movies that gets talked about pretty much anytime horror movies get talked about at all. And in doing so, I kept hearing about how shocking it was. Maybe not quite how scary it was. I kept hearing Hereditary was slightly scarier, and you know what? I'm going to have to agree with that. But I kept hearing about how shocking it was. And I think that my weigh in on that is not so much. But for the average movie viewer, for just, mom and pop going out to the, movies to get away from the kids and so forth, yeah, okay, this is going to be pretty shocking. But for somebody like me who, made it through, Antichrist and Necromantique and so on and so forth, yeah, not quite so much. But I could see how it could be to other folks. So I'm not going to say that, flat out, it's just not shocking. It's just, to me, less so than I was anticipating. I'm going to go ahead and throw up all the scores here. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And again, I did find the plot to be fairly intriguing. I think a lot more so than I found Hereditary to be. But at the same time, I also kind of wasn't, this really didn't have a whole lot of mystery to it. I found myself enjoying it on a documentary level. And I don't mean that this was filmed in a documentary style. Clearly, certainly it wasn't. What I meant was I found myself enjoying it on the same level that I find myself enjoying a good documentary. I was watching this like I was watching Planet Earth. I was, as the culture of this village got revealed more and more, and the ceremonies got revealed more and more, and the visual aspects got revealed more and more, and the details got fleshed out, I was really enjoying those beats of that. And to me, it sets the tone pretty quickly that the characters are in over their heads and they're in a situation of potentially dire straits. So, I mean, that, as far as, kind of tension goes, is kind of off the table for me. It kind of sets that stage pretty early on, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't take too long into the ceremony to kind of realize that the situation is a little bit more than they bargained for. So that element of mystery is kind of gone for me. And then in doing so, they also kind of reveal that as far as stakes go, this isn't something that is lighthearted, that if the stakes do reach their ultimate conclusion, that this village has no issue with the concept of death. So as far as the stakes go, there wasn't a whole lot of mystery to it to me. I mean, we kind of established the danger and the stakes pretty early on, way, way, way before the characters do. I mean, they start to get kind of a little something's wrong here, but we already at that point know something's very wrong here. But at the same time, what the village was representing themselves to be, even though it was shrouded in secrecy, at the same time, what truths they were telling were fairly truthful in terms of how they did feel about death. It was more, there was a whole lot of lies of omission. And so, as opposed to lies being revealed, it more became the truth being unfolded. And as that truth was being unfolded, as the nature of the ceremonies was starting to get more and more fleshed out and revealed, I just found myself enjoying the view. Somehow, I actually managed to find myself enjoying this movie from an anthropological point of view. But even so, I did enjoy it. Again, I think the intent really served what it was trying to do. There was a lot of allegory and symbolism. Like I said, the fine details of this culture was phenomenal. And I think that also lent itself to the quality of the viewing experience, which affects, obviously, the intent score there. But just all the little fine details, such as so many things taking place in multiples of 9. All sorts of little things like that. Clearly, this had a lot of thought put into it, right from the script stage. This is one of those movies that can be talked about endlessly by fans, and that's something that I actually appreciate. I love a good conversation about horror movies, and when we have something that's less detailed, less interesting, less effort put into it by the filmmakers, it kind of just, sometimes it can be fun to riff on and so forth, and sometimes there can be a little bit of hidden subtext in there, but I don't think it really lends itself to the kind of dialogue that films like this do, and on that level, I really, really appreciate it. And as far as how it's being talked about, how much it's being talked about, how it's pretty much invading every forum out there right now, I got a little bit more perspective on that, and I'm really glad that I had the rotted conversation that I had yesterday. If you watched the video from yesterday, I had the podcast panel there, and one of the things that I came away with was, yes, it's probably being talked about a bit more than... It doesn't need to invade every single nook and cranny of every single horror conversation. However, this is a remarkable movie, and it is worth talking about. And for something that is this elevated and having so much of this content, there is a sense in the horror community right now of a bit of a kid in a candy store. And for that, I actually, I'm appreciating it more on that level. I'm starting to kind of see how it's being discussed everywhere, and at the very least, kind of seeing it with a different set of eyes. So, but okay, moving on to the next category. Sorry, the acting I thought was fantastic through and through. Florence Pugh especially stole the show on this one. She was phenomenal in all the ways that her character was broken and how every aspect of the situations that were going on allowed her to explore every single new depth of how broken her character was and became. And obviously the technical score gets extraordinarily high marks there. I already mentioned the detail, I mentioned the visual beauty of this and so forth. It's honestly one of the biggest feathers in this film's cap. The camera work, the sound, the music was haunting. Honestly, everything about this on a technical level, I thought really, really nailed it. So 23 out of 25 points there, which gives us a grand total of 81 out of 100 points. I thought this was a remarkably good movie. There is one thing that I wish this movie had done that is going to be a little bit tough to kind of work around on a spoiler-free way. I'm going to do my best to just dance around this a little bit, but I already mentioned the gaslighting of Danny and Christian's relationship and how she would apologize. There is a certain level of, let's just say, catharsis towards the ceremony's conclusion for the Danny character. And one of the things I wish it had done is kind of bring that gaslighting aspect from the beginning, bring it home. They have a lot of things that they brought home with that level of catharsis as far as what they allowed the Danny character to explore. And the one thing that I wish is that they wouldn't have allowed her to apologize. If during that moment of catharsis she had attempted and they had stopped her, that basically this is not something to apologize for. We're not going to let you, but we're going to let you feel how you feel. That is something that I would have liked to have seen, but it's kind of easy for me to be, armchair quarterback with things like that, what I would and wouldn't have done and so forth. But that is one thing that kind of stood out to me is an aspect of this movie that I appreciated at the beginning, and I kind of felt like it didn't really have that particular nugget aspect didn't have kind of the cap put on it that the rest of the film did. But regardless, I enjoyed it very much, and I would say that I absolutely recommend this movie. For every horror fan, for honestly every dramatic movie fan, yes, if you're not going into it expecting a horror movie, or if you're not going into it as a horror movie fan, there are going to be aspects of this movie that is going to be very visually challenging to you, very disturbing to you. But I do think it's beautiful, and I think that it's an interesting character study. I think it's a heartbreaking character study, and I think that it's very much a film worth watching, and I am very much looking forward to what Ari Aster comes out with next. So that should about do it. That's my review of 2019's Midsommar. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and if you want to support me further, my Patreon and my merchandise storefront links are below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.